Ready. Play.
Well, hello there and welcome to my WTA US Open Power Ranking. I don't know whether people still want this or not, but I'm still doing it. So here we go. And I find it fun trying to see if I can work out if we can put the potential US Open champion of 2024 on some kind of shortlist. Now, I am going to go out on a limb here and say this might be my most controversial power ranking yet. We'll wait and see. Maybe you can tell me in the comments if you remember any of my others, like, no, your one from Australia 2023 was crazier. I don't think I did one in 2023. Anyway, moving on. You know how the drill. I usually do a list of 10 players I think you need to watch at a Grand Slam, who I think are more likely than the rest of the field to win, or at least are very likely to be seen in the second week, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and progressing towards the final and even the trophy. I do want to do some quick honorable mentions. I'm not going to go into why. I'm just going to give you a montage, as it were. They are Emma Navarro, Leila Fernandez, Diana Schneider, Elina Svitolina, and Donna Vekic. They are players that I think you need to keep an eye on US Open as your kind of, I don't know about dark horses because most of them will be seeded, but players that are probably ripe for causing some kind of upset and giving us some spectacular tennis in New York. With that all being said, let's get into the power ranking, starting with, controversially, number 11. Yes, you heard me, number 11, Marta Kostyuk. And the reason I'm putting Marta Kostyuk on this list is because she's been incredibly consistent sort of post-Wimbledon. In fact, she's been very consistent throughout most of the year, apart from a bit of a blip around about the grass court season. But she's one of the few players who's reached the last 16 or further of the Olympics, Toronto and Cincinnati. With consistency comes confidence. And I think that Marta Kostyuk will be there to pick up on opportunities the draw presents her. I think it's very likely we'll see her in at least the second week and maybe even beyond if things work her way with the rest of the draw. Number 10, Paula Badosa, the Washington, D.C. champion and the Cincinnati semi-finalist. And it does seem that Badosa is starting to look like her old self again, the self that we saw who made world number 2 a couple of years ago. She is still playing through pain. There's a bit of a physical question mark, but I think it's safe to say that Paula Badosa is in form right now and could make waves in New York. Number 9, Barbora Krejcikova. Krejcikova was really hard to place on this list. I felt it would be ridiculous to not include the Wimbledon champion, especially since people who do well at Wimbledon generally kind of follow that up in the US. If you look at sort of Vondrushova, I think she made quarters of the US Open last year. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but she did all right the New York last year. You have, what was it? Rybakina didn't do great, but she doesn't do great in the US anyway. And then Ash Barty was hot favorite in 2021. Yeah, generally speaking, with the speed of the courts and the way Krejcikova seems to be building some confidence back up, I put her back in the mix here. The fact she's not played very much since Wimbledon, she's only done the Olympics, she hasn't done a hard court warm-up, it's putting question marks over how in form she is right now, which is why I'm not putting her higher up the list. Number 8, Jasmine Paolini. Can't ignore her. Let's face it, you can't really ignore Paolini after the summer. She's had 2 Grand Slam finals, doubles gold in the Olympics, and picking up some consistent wins throughout the season, to be honest. So she's got a lot going for her right now, and I wouldn't bet against her making something like quarterfinals again in the US. She seems to be comfortable on hard courts as well. Let's see how it goes. Number 7, Elena Rybakina. Yes, you heard me right. One of the top 4, quote unquote, of the WTA is actually not going to be in the top 4 power ranking because, let's face it, Rybakina's progress has stalled a little bit. Wimbledon upset was a bit of a shock. She wasn't one of the Olympics. She missed it. And then she put in a very messy performance against Leylah Fernandez in Cincinnati. None of these are unrecoverable from, but when you look at her history in North America and how she seems to have underperformed there, she deserves to be in the power ranking of her potential, of the results she's built up over the course of this sort of last 12 months. We will see whether Elena Rybakina can produce her top end level in New York. That's the big question mark. That's why I can't put her higher than 7. All right, top 6. Danielle Collins, who is mainly here because she's the Miami champion. Similar to Krejcikova, not coming in with a lot of form. She's had an abdominal injury. She's currently playing in Monterrey. We have a lot of question marks about how she's going to do in the US Open. But she's here on the strength of she's had a very good season. It's going deep at big tournaments very regularly. Last 16 to Wimbledon, losing to eventual champion. Really, the French Open was a blip in terms of her events that she's entered, kind of Miami onwards, in terms of her going deep in draws. And, she's going to want to make a splash at her last US Open. And she's a Miami champion. And I'm going to be very much favoring people who have won 1,000 events in North America this season in this ranking. So that's why Danielle Collins is number 6. Number 5, Zheng Wen, the Olympic champion. High on confidence right now, it's fair to say. Followed up with a last 16 loss in Cincinnati. We don't know how much that loss to Pavlyuchenkova was affected by potentially any fatigue or whatnot, but we know Zheng likes the US. She's a quarterfinalist here last year. She kind of got that important win over Swiatek in the Olympics. Let's see how she is in the US. Maybe she's going to play really free and really confident. If she is, she's going to be super dangerous. And I would not be surprised to see her in the US Open semi-finals. So Zheng Wen, number 5. Number 4 is Coco Gauff. Now, I flipped Gauff around this list quite a fair bit. She ended up in like the 3 to 6 range, and she was the one I wasn't entirely sure where to place. Because although she is the defending champion, it's fair to say that her form is starting to stutter a bit after Roland Garros. Wimbledon, last 16 exit to Emma Navarro, defeat to Diana Schneider, lost to Donna Vekic in the last 16 of the Olympics. Obviously, Cincinnati ended up being a little bit of a disappointment for her as well when she lost to Yulia Putintseva in the opening round. Now, I will caveat this with saying that none of these are bad losses in terms of the players, but it does highlight that she's potentially more vulnerable than not. But when I'm looking at sort of the boxes that potential US Open champions need to tick, she still ticks a lot of them. And so for that reason, we have to take her seriously as a contender. Now, no one's successfully defended the US Open since Serena Williams 10 years ago. Let's see if Coco Gauff can do that, but she's certainly going to have the crowd behind her. That's going to help her a lot. She is a big-time player. And obviously, she's got that experience of winning a slam before, whereas Zheng and Collins don't, which is why I put her above. However, I couldn't put her above the number 3 player on my list, Jessica Pegula, who arguably is one of the 3 players with the most momentum going into the US Open. Champion in Toronto, finalist in Cincinnati, and whilst she didn't look like beating Sabalenka in that final, she held her own pretty well. She wasn't demolished. Even if Sabalenka hadn't got nervous closing that match out, Pegula still would have lost by only a single break in both sets. Pegula was serving out most of her service games pretty well. Sabalenka just did a very good job of taking her chances in the end. So I think that's kind of where Pegula's at, where I'm feeling pretty confident that she's going to make a deep run in the US. The question then happens is, what is she going to do when she runs into the other two kind of big name players in Flushing Meadows? How is she going to cope? Because at the minute, I think she's only losing to a top player in form or someone else having the 2 weeks of their life, which could happen in the WTA. But right now, Jessica Pegula has a lot of momentum behind her, far more than pretty much anyone else on the list we've had so far. And so she has to be number 3. Number 2, Iga Swiatek. Former US Open champion 2 years ago. There is a precedent for people defending US Open titles from 2 years before. Naomi Osaka did that in 2020. And as a former out of the former champions in the field, if it's going to be a former champion kind of lifting the US Open trophy again, she's probably the most likely one out of all the ones who are going to be playing. The others being Coco Gauff, Sloane Stephens, Emma Raducanu, Naomi Osaka herself, Bianca Andreescu. Now, that's not the only thing there's to be. Like, a lot's been said about Swiatek on slow courts, but she's still on fast courts, but she still made the Cincinnati semifinals. Very similar way that she won the US Open. She is the world number 1 for a reason. Is she going to be more vulnerable here? Yes. Is she going to be the favorite in pretty much every match she has? Yes, frankly. And so don't count Swiatek out at all. I think she's going to be more likely than almost anyone else to be a factor. And she's going to pick up plenty of wins in Flushing Meadows. But let's face it, there's an overwhelming number 1 choice right now. My number 1 going into the US Open, and probably everyone else's number 1 pick for the title, is Aryna Sabalenka, who is the Cincinnati champion. So she could be doing another Cincinnati US Open double. It does seem to be that in recent years, Cincinnati seems to be the event that is better forecasting US Open form. You have Goff winning last year, winning the double, Garcia getting to the semi-finals in 2022 and maybe just getting upset by a bad matchup in Ons Jabeur in the semi-finals. Year before that would have been Ash Barty. It was a weird year in 2021. So there's precedent here that Cincinnati's going to help. But even if it wasn't, did you see how dominant Sabalenka was? How confident she's playing on these courts? She's a US Open finalist from last year. She's been slowly progressing her way to the final over the years. Again, semi-finals in 21, lost in 3. Semi-finals in 2022, lost from a break up in the decider to Swiatek. 2023, lost from a setup to Coco Gauff. I think Aryna Sabalenka is edging her way towards an eventual US Open title and closing the gap to Iga Swiatek in the rankings. We'll have to see. Sabalenka's also got the benefit of being the player who is the most consistent at slams. I mean, if she only played at slams, it would she'd probably still be similarly ranked. She's probably out of the field the most trusted to get to at least the semi-finals. So with that being said, you have to go with Aryna Sabalenka as the number 1 favorite going into New York. So, recap to finish off. Number 11, Marta Kostyuk. Number 10, Paula Badosa. Number 9, Barbora Krejcikova. Number 8, Jasmine Paolini. Number 7, Elena Rybakina. Number 6, Danielle Collins. Number 5, Zhongqin Wen. Number 4, Coco Gauff. Number 3, Jessica Pegula. Number 2, Iga Swiatek. And number 1, for the first time in my power rankings history, Aryna Sabalenka. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a comment. Am I being controversial with some of my picks here? Maybe not the top one, but the order of everyone else, maybe? What do you think of me including Kostyuk? What do you think of me ranking Rybakina so low? Is Gauff too high? Drop us a comment. Let us know. I'd love to sort of see your thoughts about this. Come join us as we build up for the US Open. There'll be draw reactions. There'll be ATP and WTA weekly shows previewing and going through all the draw, and then the US Open proper starts. And we will get to see a little bit more of tennis history made. And I'm looking forward to sharing all of that with you. But in the meantime, take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.